tonight we're going to hear about how Maharaj Parikshit received the age of Kali. In other words, when the Dwapara Yuga ended, at that time Krishna left the material world. And then we read yesterday how the Pandavas, first Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Kunti Devi retired, and then the Pandava brothers left. And then we saw the difference between how Dhritarashtra left his body by using the method of Astanga Yoga, and how Arjuna left his body simply by remembering the instructions that Krishna gave him when he spoke the Bhagavad Gita on the Battle of Kurukshetra. So we'll just finish something about the Pandavas leaving. It says here that in First Canto, Chapter 15, Text 49, they, meaning all the Pandavas, all had performed all the principles of religion, and as a result, rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord, Sri Krishna, are the supreme goal of life. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. So this is basically what the Rig Veda says, Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sadapasyanti Surayo Diviva Chaksuratatam Tat Vipasno Vipanyavo. And Srila Prabhupada writes, in the Bhagavad Gita 7.28, the Lord says that only those who have done pious deeds in previous lives and have become freed from the results of all impious acts, only they can concentrate upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. The Pandavas, not only in this life, but also in their previous lives, had always performed the supreme pious work, that is, meditating on Krishna and serving Krishna, and thus they are ever free from all the reactions of impious work. It is quite reasonable, therefore, that they concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, according to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha principles are accepted by persons who are not free from the results of impious actions. Such persons, affected with the contamination of the above four principles, cannot at once accept the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. The Vaikuntha world is situated far beyond the material sky. The material sky is under the management of Durga Devi, or the material energy of the Lord, but the Vaikuntha world is managed by the personal energy of the Lord. So here Prabhupada quoted a verse, 728, Yesam Twantagatam Papan Gananam Punyakarmadam Te Dvandva Mohinir Mukta Bhajante Mam Dhritavata. This verse says, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So we discussed the genesis of the dualities of delusion in this life. In fact, the previous verse, 727, says, Icha dvesa samutena dvandva mohina bharata sarvabhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa. O Skyna of Bharata, O Arjuna, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. So, desire for what? If the desire is for Krishna, there's no hate. But if the desire is for material things, there must be hate, because you're going to have fierce competition in this world for material things. Just like, let's say, two men are in love with the same woman, so there's fierce competition. Let's say two people want to buy the same house or the same property, there's fierce competition. Let's say two people want to be promoted to the same position, well, there's fierce competition. Who was it? Some company just put out a demand for applications for a job. For 328 jobs, they got 17,000 applications. So there's fierce competition when they're, and from that one develops hatred, envy, anger, when they don't get what they want. And these things bewilder people. You know, they're going between Icha and Dvesa, desire and hatred, desire and hatred, desire and hatred. And bewildered by these dualities that arise from desire and hate. So Prabhupada says the real constitutional position of a living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from the pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, when we refuse to be surrendered to Krishna, what happens? This pure knowledge that this is my eternal position, I'm eternally the servant of God. But when we refuse that, then we become subject, or we're separated from that knowledge, and we become subjected to being controlled by the illusory energy. And the illusory energy, or Maya Devi, manifests in the form of Icha and Dvesa. And then, like a ping pong ball, we're going back and forth. Icha Dvesa, Icha Dvesa, Icha Dvesa. Desire, hate, desire, hate, desire, hate. Just like the perfect example is Walmart on Black Friday. It starts now. It used to start like 6 in the morning. Now it starts 12 o'clock at night. Because the more demons come out when it's dark. So all the demons come out, and they're all waiting around, and they're getting into fights about who was first in line, right? So I think it was 3 years ago when the poor Walmart employee opened the door, right? There was a stampede and he died. He died. They just stampeded over him. They didn't care. The guy died. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was just doing his job. He just opened the door. They stampeded him. See? So, and people, you know, they pepper spray each other. One guy pulled out a gun this year, shot somebody. They're fighting for the same thing. They have to run to the aisle. They, you know, before the sale, right? They all checked out, you know, the aisles, where the things are that they want. So they want to get in as soon as possible. They grab what they want before it's gone. And then they get into fights sometimes. This is a perfect example of Icha, desire, and hatred. The same thing happened in football games and soccer games, you know. Like in, there was a championship soccer game between the Italians and the British. The Manchester team against the Italian Milan team or something. So the Italians came to England for the match. And I think British might have been winning or not. But and they know it's very emotional, so they block off with metal fencing the two sides, so they can't get at each other. And then there's different entrances and exits, right? But during the game, the British were drinking. They went wild. They broke the metal fence, climbed through it, and killed 8 Italians. See, it just killed them. They don't even know who they are. Only because they were on the other side. And this is not war, right? It's not World War II. This is a football game. You see. So desire and hatred is going on every level. And this guy, this man named Lance Armstrong, the man who won the bicycle race, 7 or 8 times. There's no athlete in the world that's ever done such a thing, right? He was ratted out by the wife of one of his team members. She found out that he was taking steroids and other, enhancement drugs for high performance. And he was trying to force her husband to take him, and he refused. So he quit the team, and then she became very upset, and then she went and tattletaled on him. Ratted him out, or she was the, as they say, the snitch. She snitched on him. Or the whistleblower. They took away all his medals. He had won the Tour de France 8 times. It's a grueling race. You have to bicycle up hills, down hills, up mountains, down mountains, hundreds of miles. And, you have the best bicycle men in the world doing it. He won it 8 or 9 times. They took all the medals away from him. That's it. Desire and hate. And people become bewildered. How would you feel? You win the Tour de France 8 times, they take all your medals away, and your name is dirt. So, this is what's happening. So then the next verse he says, but persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. In other words, one must be completely free of all sinful actions and reactions to be able to engage in Krishna's service. Prabhupada says, those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, what are they? The yamas and niyamas, the don'ts and the do's, no meat eating, fish, eggs, murgi, chicken, things like that. No gambling or philosophical speculation. No intoxication, including coffee and tea. And no illicit activities outside of marriage. So these are the don'ts. And the do's, regularly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as we're doing now. Why? Because we forget easily. So this regular hearing helps us. Oftentimes we're going over the same thing day after day because it's not sinking in. Then, chanting Hare Krishna. Minimum 16 rounds a day. If you can't do 16, it's all right in the beginning. You do whatever you can. 1 round, 2 rounds, 4 rounds. Increase gradually, you'll get up to 16. Minimum. You can do 32 or 64 if you want, if you have time. Then, respect only prasadam. And everything is not prasadam. Prasadam is only something that's been offered to Krishna, prepared for Krishna, offered to Krishna with love and devotion. And regularly engage in seva, unselfish acts of devotion for Krishna. Get your name on the list of volunteer service. One man called me up today and he said, I want to thank you. I said, what for? He said, can you guys keep your temple clean? I said, really? He said, that's important. Every time I come, I see it's pretty clean, and I can sit down peacefully and meditate on your deities. This is very good, he said. I like that. I said, well, we clean it every day. If you want, you can come and help us. We have to stay sometimes till 11, 12 o'clock at night cleaning the temple. Especially after big festivals. And then there's all the dishes that we have to clean, the kitchen. But it's important, see? People appreciate it. They understand. They see. One man came here the other night, he's a very wealthy man. He said, how come you're going to feed all these people here? How come you're going to feed them? Right? There were like 400 people here, Because he knows, like, when he gives a party, he knows how much he has to pay to feed everyone, right? And we're doing it almost every day. So he was saying, you're doing this? He's a very rich man, much richer than one of the richest Indians in India, in Seattle. And he's like all upset that we're feeding so many people. Okay, so that's all right. That's all right. People are concerned. We're not wasting any money, believe me. We're using the money properly. So, only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. What is a delusion? I'm this body. Everything in relationship to this body is mine. And I can increase it, and increase it, and increase it. I don't care about death. I just care about increasing material things. You know, if I get sick, I'll have bypass surgery. If I need a new kidney, I'll pay for it. If I need a new gallbladder, I'll pay for it. Yeah. If I need a new hip, I'll pay for it. If I need a new knee or ankle, I'll pay for it. Okay. How about a new brain? Right. So you can pay for just so many things. There's things you can't pay for. Just like there was this man named Onassis. He was one of the richest men in the world. He had a fleet of hundreds, maybe thousands of merchant ships. As a Greek man, he married John Kennedy's wife, Jackie, and then she became Jackie Onassis. One day his son had an airplane accident. His son had one of these little planes that he'd fly. It crashed. He arrived on the scene. The son was still a little bit alive. And he told the medics there, he said, I'll give you any amount of money. You want $100 million, you want $200 million, you want $500 million, I'll give it to you, just save his life. And they just looked at him in bewilderment. They said, there's no way we can do it. He's too far gone. So money cannot buy everything. That's the point. It can't buy everything. It can only buy a few things, and there's few puny things, actually. You can't buy 1 minute of our life that has passed. That's how precious and valuable our time is. You can't buy 1 minute. You can't buy 1 second. You can't say, Yamaraj, here's $500 million. Give me back 1 second. No, no way you can do it. Therefore, we cannot waste anything in life, especially time. So the main thing is to associate with genuine devotees. That's the whole gist of spiritual life. It's not simply, oh, I'll sit down and chant Hare Krishna. If you chant alone, eventually you'll stop. But if you associate continually with devotees, then you will make advancement in spiritual life. So the Pandavas had performed these principles of religion their whole life, and they came to the conclusion after a whole lifetime of practice that the lotus feet of Lord Krishna are the supreme goal of all life. Serving the lotus feet, taking shelter at the lotus feet. This is Canto 1, Chapter 15, verse 46. Okay, and now, thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attain the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. Notice it says the supreme Narayana. Previously, Bhisma Pitamaha said, he was explaining to Yudhisthira who Krishna is. And he says, he is the Adi Narayana, the original Narayana. He said, don't be fooled. He's walking around here, you know, you think he's your cousin or something. No, no, no. He's bewildering all of us. He's actually the Adi Narayan. This is the first canto, 9th chapter, where Bhisma Pitamaha, and Bhisma Pitamaha is a Mahajan, is a #1 expert in the universe, in Krishna consciousness. First of all, he says, O king, he's talking to Yudhisthira, right? This is the same Bhisma Pitamaha who taught Yudhisthira the Vishnu Sahasra Nama Sutra. It comes from him. He's no ordinary man, right? He's not even a human being. He's a deva. His mother is Ganga Devi. He was trained on the Deva Lokas for 16 years and then brought back to the earth, given to his father, Santanu Maharaj, right? So, in the first canto, 9th chapter, 16th verse, Bhisma Deva is speaking to Yudhisthira. He said, O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Shri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. And then in the purport it says, the bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhisthira over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhisma, one of the 12 authorized persons who are experts on Krishna consciousness in the universe. Bhisma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhisthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord, without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. They were not due to karma. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. The whole Mahabharata is about virtue conquering over vice. Bhismadev was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhisthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhisma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhismadeva was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhisma cannot win on the wrong side. And then he says, O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhisthira, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. In other words, everything that happened to you. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. And now he begins his instruction on what's called Raja Dharma. Raja Dharma was spoken by Bhismadev to Yudhisthira to convince him to become the king. He didn't want to. He thought he was guilty of killing so many people. When he found out that Karna was his older brother, he became extremely distraught. He said to his mother, "Why did you do that? Why didn't you just tell us? We would have been happy if he was king, or if Duryodhana was king with Karna." His mother kept a secret. Therefore, what did Yudhisthira do? He cursed all women not to be able to keep a secret. So, this is a serious thing. Okay, so then he says, Esa vai Bhagavata Sakshat Adyo Narayana Pumam Mahayan Mayaya Lokam Gudas Charity Vrishnisu. He says, this Sri Krishna, Bhisma is on a bed of arrows, right? The arrows sticking in his body, every part of his body. He's stuck to the ground. And he was like that for a month or so, waiting for the Battle of Kurukshetra to finish, and then waiting for all the funerals of all the people that died, and waiting for everyone to calm down a little bit. And there was a drama. Krishna couldn't convince Yudhisthira to become the king. So then, on this day, this is Makara Sankranti day, right, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, they all come because Bhisma had decided to leave his body on this day. It's a very auspicious day. It's coming up very soon, the 13th of January. We can all leave our bodies on that day. No, not really. You can leave your sinful desires, yes. That's a body. That's called the Sarira Linga. And there's two lingas. There's the gross body and the subtle body. So we want to purify both of them because they're both covering the soul. So now he says, this Sri Krishna, Krishna's standing on his right-hand side. Yudhisthira is on the other side. And then everybody else is all around. Listening to Yudhisthira, listening to Bhisma Pitamaha speak to Yudhisthira, explaining the Raja Dharma. It's a very, very dramatic moment. And he says, this person right here, standing next to me, is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. Now, many people do Bhagavad Saptah. How many of them have stopped on this verse to explain it in depth? Very few. Very, very few. This is the central point of the whole Bhagavatam. Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Who is the origin of everything? Janmadasya yata. Bhisma Pitama is explaining. The Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic. In the Bhagavad Gita, the truth is confirmed in the 4th chapter, Bhagavad Gita 4.2, and the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. So, Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsayo vidu sakalena mahata yoganasta parantapa. Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that he explained that this knowledge has passed through what's called parampara, the system of disciplic succession from one perfect self-realized devotee to another. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So therefore Krishna spoke it again to Arjuna 5,000 years ago. So, but when he says that this knowledge, this Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is deductive. Deductive means that you begin with a priori truths. A priori truths means self-evident. Just like an a priori truth. Everybody has a father. Do you want to argue against it? You have any arguments? It's not a true statement? Every human being has a father. Can you argue against it? It's self-evident. There's no way. So you begin with the Vedic self-evident truths, and then you deduct from that. You don't begin with a guess. Oh, I think everybody doesn't have a father. I think I can find someone that doesn't have a father. Let's assume some people don't have fathers. That's all nonsense. Yes. So the Vedic process of acquiring knowledge is deductive. In other words, you go to an authority and you hear from the authority. And if the authority is Bhisma Pitamaha, in the disciplic succession of Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya, then, or even the Sri Sampradaya, or the Kumar Sampradaya, or the Rudra Sampradaya, then you're going to get the right information. Every one of those Sampradayas say that Krishna or Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But here's some more information. Bhisma is saying that Krishna himself is Adi Narayana, the original Narayana, from which all the other Narayanas are coming. So it says, the very same system is accepted universally as truth, but only the false arguer speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when the scientist says that they travel to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. See, the British system was very perfect in India. They taught people not to believe in the Vedas. They called it mythology, like Greek mythology. But to believe in what they say. And they say that there was an Aryan invasion of North India. And with the Aryans came a obscure rural deity called Krishna. that somehow or other was elevated to the pantheon of worship gods in India. It was like an accident because of the invasion. That's all nonsense. None of it is true. And they came up with this theory of the Aryan invasion of India, and the Aryans pushed the Dravidians to the south and then dominated India. Why? They wanted it to fit within the Christian timeline that the world is only 5,000 years old. Because the Vedas say it's hundreds and billions of years old, right? But the Christians wanted to subjugate the Vedic timeline to the Christian timeline. So first of all, they said the Vedas are mythology. Then secondly, they came up with this phony theory called the Aryan invasion of India. And where do the Aryans come from? They come from my country, from Armenia, in the Caucasian area. You know, they're called Caucasians. So they say that some people are lighter and the Dravidians are darker, and they pushed the Dravidians to the south, and then they dominated everything. You know, and then they brought their deities with them, and so forth. And then they say the Vedas were written, 500 BC, 800 after the birth of Christ, and things like all nonsense, hogwash, speculation. And but because they had control of the schools, and what did they do? They trained up young Indians to believe this nonsense, and then the young Indians trained up other Indians to believe it, and it's been going on ever since. That's why you have so many problems in India. Okay, so here it says, each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. You want to know why there's problems today? Social problems and all these problems? Because nobody accepts the authority of the Vedas. They accept the authority of the scientists, who are nonsense, complete nonsense. Just because someone can build a bridge doesn't mean he's an authority on the purpose of life. Right? But if we're talking about bridges, Lord Rama built a bigger bridge than anyone's ever built. Why don't they look at him as an authority then? He built a bigger bridge than everyone. If you want to see scientific knowledge, Ravana built a tunnel from Lanka to Brazil to excavate gold. Are we going to accept him as an authority on the purpose of life? He didn't understand what the purpose of life was. Just because he built a tunnel through the center of the earth, nobody today would be able to do that. He was able to do it. Does that mean he's an authority on the purpose of life? That's nonsense. Just because you build a bridge or an airplane, you can be the biggest rascal in the world and build a bridge or build an airplane. You see? And what did they do with the airplanes? People were saying, oh, what a wonderful, when Lindbergh flew from St. Louis to England, or France, they thought, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world, And what did they do? They used those airplanes to throw bombs. Right? And then just a few years later, the United States threw an atomic bomb on Japan, 3 atomic bombs on Japan, from an airplane. So they were heralding the airplanes with great, achievement. Fly across the Atlantic, connect the continents. And then they use it for killing people. See? Even the atomic bomb, this Fermi and Oppenheimer, all these people worked to make the atomic bomb, and then the United States government took it to kill people. They wanted to kill the Germans, the Nazis, but the American already defeated the Nazis, so they used it to kill the Japanese. And Oppenheimer was like upset like anything. He didn't care about the Japanese. He wanted the Nazi because he was Jewish. But anyway, you see what happens in life. Then they realized what they did. They made a weapon of mass destruction that can kill hundreds and thousands of people at one time. Right? Never in history was there such. Never in Western history. Of course, in Vedic history there were much more lethal weapons, but in Western history there's never any history of such a lethal weapon. Right? Okay, so Here is an authority speaking about Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and the first Narayana. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Sankara has said in the beginning of his commentation on the Bhagavad Gita that Narayana, the personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation. Now, what does Sankaracharya say? Narayana parovyakta andam avyakta sambhavam andasyantas tvime loka saptadvipa chamedini. Bhagavad Gita Bhasya of Sankaracharya. Right? And he's supposed to be a Mayavadi. He's actually a devotee. He's incarnation of Lord Shiva. What does he say? That Lord Narayana is transcendental to the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayana is transcendental. That means he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's not like us, subject to the modes of material nature, subject to Icha and Dvesa, subject to Sochati and Kankshati, all these dualities. Bhismadev is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Sri Krishna as being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonalist Sankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhismadeva says that he is the first Narayana. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam 10:14-14. Krishna is the first Narayana. In the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, there are unlimited numbers of Narayanas who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansions of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The first form of Lord Sri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladeva, and Baladeva expands in so many other forms such as Sankarsana, Pradumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva, Narayana, Purusha, Rama, and Nisringa. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the creator of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayana in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movements amongst human beings are another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. The bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called the marginal energy. So we are the marginal energy. We're in the middle. We can go both ways. We can go to Krishna or we can go to Maya. Therefore, we're marginal. We're not forced either way. Those are decisions we make. Just like today, someone came to see me. And he said, Prabhuji, I want your permission to divorce my wife. I said, what? I said, were you forced to marry your wife? He said, no. Were you forced into having a child with your wife? He said, no. I said, therefore, you are forced to stay married because you accepted those responsibilities. And if you divorce your wife and leave your child, you are a sinful person. You're not Krishna. In fact, if you do that, what you're doing is making people hate Krishna consciousness and hate Krishna because of your despicable behavior. And so you cannot get divorced. You cannot leave your wife until those children are born, grow up, and they're properly educated and they're properly married. And if you even think of doing such a thing like that, you're a rascal. He didn't like it. He said, no, I'm Punjabi. I don't, this is not my nature. I don't like this lady. I said, that's the point. You're identifying with the body. You're not identifying with the soul. You're Punjabi. You're not Punjabi. You're not any more Punjabi than your dog. All that is a false identification. He said, no, I just came back from Mayapur and I want to be a devotee. I said, you want to be a devotee? You stay married. Take care of your children. Take care of your wife. That's being a devotee. You even think about it, or you say such a thing, you're a rascal. So this is the whole point, that one must follow Vedic authority. If a person wants to be educated, if they want to be civilized, if they want to be a human being, you have to follow Vedic authority. Otherwise, one becomes an animal very quickly. Now, the bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called marginal energy. The living entities are expansions of his marginal energy, and thus they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. So internal energy is Yogamaya, and the external energy is Mahamaya. So we get bewildered by both. When we see Krishna, like Lord Brahma, he got bewildered by the Yogamaya. He saw Krishna as a little baby in Vrindavan, a little boy telling his father not to worship. And there was all these rumors that he's God. So Brahma came and he said, oh, okay, this little shrimp is God, I'll show him. So he steals all the cows and cowherd boys, right? And he goes away and comes back right away. And when he comes back, all the cows and cowherd boys are still there. And he gets bewildered. He says, how's that? I just took him away. And he looks at it. And then he sees them transforming themselves simultaneously into Vishnu forms, each one of them. Again, he's bewildered beyond comparison. First of all, he can't understand how they're still there because he just took them away. Then they're going back and forth from showing a Vishnu form to showing a cow or a cowherd boy. He was totally bewildered. Totally bewildered. And then he thought, how can I be bewildered? I'm the supreme master in the universe. There's only one person that could bewilder me. That's the boss, Sri Krishna, Bhagavan. Then he realized he got bewildered by the internal energy of the Lord. The Lord is appearing as a little boy in Vrindavan. Even though he's the original Narayana, he got bewildered by the internal energy of the Lord. See? So, sometimes we get bewildered by the internal energy, sometimes we get bewildered by the external energy. External energy, we see beautiful things, and we say, oh, this is such a nice person. Just like when Surpanaka, she's a Rakshasa, but she transformed herself with Botox, with Clarins cream or whatever, and mystical power, into a beautiful lady. Nice eyelashes, nice earrings, tight dress, high heels, different kinds of nylon stockings and jewelry and Lanvin perfume and everything. And all of a sudden, she walks up and she's trying to entice Lord Ram. And Lord Ram said, well, I'm already married. Why don't you go to my brother Lakshman? He's not married yet. He might be interested. She goes to Lakshman. She says, well, how about you? I said, well, you got to excuse me. And I always defer to my brother. He's the boss around here, And I think you better go back to him, So she goes back to him and said, no, I can't marry us. And then she looks at Sita and said, well, you're married, huh? Well, I'll solve that problem. And she tries to kill Sita Devi, and then they stop her, and then Lakshman cuts off her nose. Then she reverts back to what she was, a Rakshasa. Now, we see this all the time. Like, for example, some big movie star comes out, she looks so beautiful and nice, and she gives a performance like Barbara Streisand, for example, And she gives it, and then she goes backstage, and you see that she's a horrible person, arrogant, nasty, full of explicative language, and then you realize, my God, these people are just demons. They look great on stage. They look great when they're performing, but you actually meet them, they're horrible people. So, this is the external energy. Looks are deceiving. Clothes don't make the man. It's the behavior that counts. So here, Prabhupada is saying that we become bewildered by the action of Krishna's two energies, internal and external energy. The living entities are the expansion of his marginal energy, and thus they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayanas, and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world, and by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst men, animals, or demigods to establish his forgotten relationship with the living entities in different species of life. That means Krishna takes incarnations as fish, as turtles, as pigs, as a pig. It is bewildering. When Hiranyaksha saw Varaha, he was totally bewildered. A gigantic boar. I mean, he couldn't believe it. He was much bigger than a planet. He was much bigger than many planets of the whole universe. And they fought this battle in outer space, and Varaha was playing with him. And then he finally killed him. Just like a cat. Sometimes he plays with a mouse, you know. He lets the mouse run away, and then he catches it and brings it back. Then it lets go, and the mouse runs away, and he catches it and brings it back. And then finally he kills it when he gets bored. Right? Varaha did the same thing with Hiranyaksha. So, this is tremendously bewildering to living entities. Okay, so then Bhisma continues. We'll skip that for now. Look, there's one other thing we have to say here. Then Bhisma Pitama is continuing this Raja Dharma. In other words, the first thing he tells Yudhisthira about Raja Dharma is who is Krishna. Because a king has to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of God. Otherwise, he's not a king. He's a rascal. He's no better than a dog if he's representing himself. He's supposed to be the representative of God. That's why they were called Maharshis. They were a Rishi and a Kshatriya. They were not just Kshatriyas, they were Maharshis. They were great, elevated devotees who took the position of a king to lead people properly, to protect the principles of religion or Dharma. So then he says, O king, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories. Now he's talking about Krishna who's standing next to him, right? He's laid down like this, and they're all sitting or standing next to him, listening to him. His glories through direct contact. In other words, Kapila Dev, who is an incarnation of Krishna, he's saying he also knows about Krishna, right? Because they all have had confidential contact with Krishna. Pure devotees of the Lord are all bhavas, or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary form, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord who are engaged in the exchange of service of different humors. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely, and these are the 12 Mahajans, the 12 experts on knowledge of Krishna and spiritual life: Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlada, Bhisma, Janaka, Sukadeva Goswami, Bali Maharaj, and Yamaraj, and Bhismadev. Although one of them has mentioned only 3 important names of the 12 who know the glories of the Lord. So Bhisma only mentions 3 names in this verse, but there are 12, including Bhismadev. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the great acharyas in the modern age, explains that Anubhava, or the glory of the Lord, is first appreciated by the devotee in ecstasy, manifesting the symptoms of perspiring, trembling, weeping, bodily eruptions, etc., which are further enhanced by steady understanding of the glories of the Lord. Such different understandings of bhavas are exchanged between Yasoda and Lord Krishna when she binds the Lord by ropes, and in the chariot driving by Lord in exchange of love with Arjuna. These glories of the Lord are exhibited in his being subordinated before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami and the Kumaras, although situated in a transcendental position, became converted by another feature of bhava and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. Yeah, the Kumaras by smelling the tulsi leaf at the lotus feet of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami simply by hearing Bhagavatam spoken by his father. There's different bhavas, different things that put people into ecstasy of love of Krishna. Tribulations imposed upon the devotees, or in other words, troubles imposed upon the devotees by the Lord, constitute another exchange of transcendental bhava between the Lord and his devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. Placing the devotee into material troubles necessitates delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Thus the Lord snatches the fallen soul from the mire of material existence. Tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotee are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious actions. All these glories of the Lord are especially known to the great Mahajans like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Kapila, Kumara, and Bhisma, as mentioned above, and one is able to grasp it by their grace. So troubles, difficulties in life, can be induced by Krishna, not because of your karma, but to help you, or to help us, disentangle ourselves from material attachments. And so we become sober and dedicated to serving Krishna. Therefore, a devotee accepts everything, good or bad, as Krishna's mercy. He doesn't accept the good as Krishna's mercy and the bad as a reason to give up worshiping Krishna. He'll start worshiping Hitler or somebody else, who will pander to his material desires. Okay, so now we're going to go back to chapter 15. And this is the Pandavas are retiring from material life. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. So, Supreme Narayana. See, they already learned this from Bhisma Dev. They learned exactly who Krishna is. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of Lord Shri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. Very interesting. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Harivilas says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahmana by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana. So this is a very important statement. Is therefore the actual guidance, the training given by the guru or gurus to the sishya in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without change of body. So it's not a question of Brahmana is by birth. It's complete nonsense. It's by training and submission and following that one can become a Brahmana. Brahmana means samadhamma tapaksocham, as we explained yesterday, purified of all material desires, not simply a false Brahmana that's doing puja for business, but a real Brahmana who's completely dedicated to serving the Lord, as were the Pandavas, although they were not born theoretically Brahmanas, but they were top Brahmanas, because they only had one purpose, that was to please Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he is used in this connection positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about this factual position. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 affirms this statement of Srila Jiva Goswami when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of three modes of material nature, and when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet Goloka Vrindavana without change of body, as we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. Okay, so anyway, there's so much here. I can't. We have to push forward here. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck on this. There's so much information, nectarian information here. So now we're going to go forward to how Maharaj Parikshit received the age of Kali. So after Krishna disappeared, Pandavas disappeared, only Maharaj Parikshit was left, right? And he became the king. And what happens? Well, symbols or signs that things have changed dramatically. The age of Kali begins. This age of hypocrisy and quarrel. So Maharaj Yudhisthira is a very good king, but one day he sees something that horrifies him. He became king of the whole world at that time. But one day while he was examining parts of his kingdom, he sees something that is absolutely unbearable to see. What is that? There was the personality of Godhead, a personality of religious principles called Dharma, who was wandering about in the form of a bull, and he met the personality of the earth in the form of a cow, who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost her child. She had tears in her eyes, and the beauty of her body was lost. Thus Dharma questioned the earth as follows. So the bull represents principles of Dharma, the cow represents Mother Earth, who supplies all the needs of human beings. But she's crying. And therefore we see how important it is to protect cows and bulls. They're not ordinary animals. Dharma, in the form of the bull, asked, "Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease, or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a distant place?" So this is very significant. It implies why people are suffering in the age of Kali. Their sufferings from internal diseases, from separation of those near and dear, and anxieties for maintaining the status quo. These are but some important factors which make the people of this age always unhappy. Oh, you know that. Let's say your family is in India, you're here, and they're always worrying about you, and they feel unhappy they don't see you. You feel unhappy you don't see them. Or there's some internal disease, you have high blood pressure, you have cardiac problems, or you have something going wrong. And or you're worried about, keeping your 401k growing, but it's diminishing. You're worried about the house property value, instead of going up, it's going down. You're worried about your job, you might get laid off. So these are some of the anxieties in the age of Kali. Is this a fact? Does anyone disagree with it? No, everyone is feeling this. So the cow, Mother Earth, or Bhumi Devi, she explains, "I have lost my 3 legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my existence?" No, this is the bull speaking to her. He only has 1 leg left. "Or are you in great anxiety because henceforth the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you?" Yeah, Kali Yuga is a big thing. eating meat. This is a big thing in India now. Eating meat, drinking alcohol, smoking, seeing rubbish Bollywood movies that put all kinds of strange thoughts in people's minds. And then, not being satisfied with the movie, going out and doing it for real in the society. Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? So with the progress of this age of Kali, 4 things particularly diminish: duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection or memory, and moral or religious principles. They all are diminished, and they'll eventually disappear. Since Dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. So what does that mean? Well, Dharma is mercy, cleanliness, truthfulness, and austerity. So 3 of those legs were broken: mercy, cleanliness, austerity. The only leg that Dharma is standing on is truthfulness, and that's being beaten now also. That's also going to be diminished till 0. And then Kali Yuga takes over. Since Dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in a proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world becomes irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals and people. In the age of Kali, godless civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. Well, we know that. There's one joker in Bellevue claims he's Krishna, Shiva, who knows who else. He's not the only one. There are thousands, maybe millions of them in the world. They claim they're God. Of course, they get toothaches, they get backaches, they get caught smuggling gold, they end up in jail. What kind of God is that? It's all a farce. And thus, faithless societies of men will make the world uninhabitable for the saner section of people. There are gradations of human beings in terms of proportionate faith in the Supreme Personality Godhead. The first-class faithful men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, and then the Sudras, then the Mlechas, the Yavanas, and at last the Chandalas. The degradation of the human instinct begins from the Mlechas, and the Chandalas state of life is the last word in human degradation. Chandalas are people who eat dogs. Actually, it says, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. Everyone is a Sudra in Kali Yuga. Everyone is born a Sudra. No one is actually a Brahmana, or a Kshatriya, or a Vaishya. We're all Sudras. And lower, like Chandalas, Mlechas, Yavanas. Mlechas are people who used to follow Vedic Sanatana Dharma and have left. Yavanas are people who are outright against the Vedic Dharma. And the Chandalas, they're in their own planet. They're just eating dogs. Right? But there's very few or no real Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. Yeah. Okay, so they are different qualifications of human beings in general. There is no question of birthright or community. One can acquire the respective qualifications by one's own efforts, and thus the son of a Vaishnava can become a Mlecha, or the son of a Chandala can become more than a Brahmana, all in terms of their association and intimate relation with the Supreme Lord. So this is the truth. The meat eaters are generally called Mlechas, but all the meat eaters are not Mlechas. Those who accept meat in terms of scriptural injunctions are not malechas, but those who accept meat without restriction are called malechas. Beef is forbidden in the scriptures, and the bulls and cows are offered special protection by followers of the Vedas. But in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types. This is happening in India. Before they would not touch beef. Now India is #1 exporter of beef. India used to have close to 1 billion cows. Now it's down to like 130 million cows. What happened to all those other cows? They were exported to Saudi Arabia and all over the place. They were killed, slaughtered in the 13,000 to 15,000 slaughterhouses that exist in India today. In 1830, there was not one slaughterhouse in India. So one British man, I think his name was Macaulay, or I'm not sure what his name was. Anyway, he asked one South Indian Brahmin, and said, "Can you explain to me, O venerable priest," he said, "can you tell me why your people seem to be happy, and why your country seems to be so full of opulence?" Yeah, everyone was trying to get to India, right, to get spices, to get gold, to get rubies, to get diamonds. You know, India is an opulent place. And the British, what was Christopher Columbus looking for? India. Well, he ended up in the West Indies. He didn't get to the East Indies. So when the British were able to subjugate India, they were awed by it, because it was such an opulent place, and there were so many people there, but they all looked relatively happy. And they were thinking, how are we going to convert these people to Christianity? How can we make them miserable? So he asked the South Indian Brahmins, what is it? What is it? Tell me, let me know what it is. Why do your people are happy? He said, well, we follow the Vedas, and we especially respect the cow. The cow is not God, but we respect the cow as our mother. And the cow gives us the milk. The milk improves the finer intelligence, and we're able to understand higher order principles, worshiping God. So he went and discussed this with other leaders of the British government in India, and they decided they should open up a slaughterhouse in Bombay and start slaughtering animals, especially the cow. You see how diabolical they are? The Brahmin told them, the Brahmin was being honest, right? He said, this is a secret, because we respect the cow and the bull, and we follow Vedic Dharma. So what do? Immediately they open up an industrial slaughterhouse, the first one in India. And today there's over 13,000 of them. There used to be close to 1 billion cows in India 30 years ago. Today's hardly 100 million. And that number is going down drastically. Okay, so the material world is a sort of prison house, as we have several times mentioned. The demigods are the servants of the Lord who see to the proper upkeep of the prison house. These demigods want to see that the rebel living beings who want to survive faithlessly are gradually turned towards the supreme power of the Lord. Therefore, the system of offering sacrifices recommended in the scriptures. The materialistic men want to work hard and enjoy fruitive results for sense enjoyment. Thus, they are committing many types of sins at every step of life. Those, however, who are consciously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord are transcendental to all varieties of sin and virtue. Their activities are free from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. For the devotees, there is no need for performance of prescribed sacrifices, because the very life of the devotee is a symbol of sacrifice. But persons who are engaged in fruitive activities for sense enjoyment must perform the prescribed sacrifices, because that is the only means to get free from the reaction of all sins committed by fruitive workers. See, in other words, pujas are for sinful people. Why? Well, because they have all these material desires, and when you try and get those material desires, you commit sins. You have to. And therefore, puja is recommended. Satyanarayana puja, this puja, that puja, Sani puja, this other puja, this Dipalika puja, Navagraha puja, all these things. What is the program? Krishna explains in the 3rd chapter, 10th verse, in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna," or sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So this whole system of yajna was set up by Krishna for us. We are people who chose to revolt against Krishna. As soon as we choose to revolt against Krishna, we're put into the prison called the material world, where we're overwhelmed with duality. And the beginning of duality is we have an eternal soul inside a temporary body, and it's bewildering. We're not quite sure whether we just mistake the body for the soul, right? And then we get a lot of phony philosophy from the materialists. Hare Krishna. So Krishna set up this system. The original Prajapati is Lord Vishnu, and he's the Lord of all living creatures, all worlds, and all beauties, and the protector of everyone. The Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas, or sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in the material world they can live very comfortably, without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. So therefore, traditionally, you had Brahmins for thousands of years in India, living very simple, very peaceful, raising families, doing pujas, living very simply, not having any anxiety, right? They didn't have a lot of money, but they didn't have any anxiety either. See? Now, people are drinking, they're smoking, they're running viz, 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 you know, they live 100 miles from Bombay, they have to take the train every day into Bombay, then at night they take the train back, they're in the train 4 hours, 5 hours a day. In Bombay, they're running here, viz, 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 office, there's office, that. Or in Hyderabad, they're waking up 6 o'clock at night, working till 8 o'clock in the morning, then going to the bar to get over all the frustration, talking with all the crazy Americans on the phone, you know, outsourcing, Best Buy and Walmart and everything. And then, you know, they go home, you know, and it's daytime, right? They're sleeping in the day, working at night, you know, and to get over the anxiety, they're drinking and smoking, doing all nonsense. What happened? What happened to that peaceful, idyllic life that used to be there? Totally ruined. Ruined by... the way they ruined it is like this. If you read in the 6th canto, we'll come to it. You know, Ajamil, he was a Brahmin boy. His father was a Brahmin. He trained him. But when he was around 14, 15, 16, one day he went out for a walk in the forest, and he saw a Sudra couple engaged in illicit sex. And it blew his mind away. From that point on, he dedicated himself to sense gratification. Right? And he married a prostitute. He became a cheater and a liar. He would go around cheating people to get money because he needed money. Right? And then he had 10 kids with that lady, and then the last kid he named Narayana because, you know, it was from his upbringing, right? And in his last moments, he was out with his young son. Young son was playing, and then he felt either a heart attack or something coming on. And the last thing he says is, Narayana, and he dies. Then the Yamadutas come to take him, because he's got a a rap sheet like this of all the sins he committed in his life. And he committed a lot of sins, right? But the Vishnudutas come and they say, no, this is our guy. And the Yamaduta said, what do you mean he's your guy? He's not your guy, he's our guy. Look at this rap sheet on him. They said, yeah, but he said the name of Narayana. So that's not that Narayana. It was his kid named Narayana. I said, doesn't matter. He said the name purely. It purified all the sins. He says, that's nonsense. We don't believe that. How can it purify all those sins? We've never heard that before. He said, listen, don't argue with us. He said, no, we don't accept it. We're going to ask Yamaraj. They go back to Yamaraj and say, is this true? These guys are saying, you just say the name Narayana once, it purifies all your sins? We've never heard this before. You never told us that. So Yamaraj says, actually, it's true. If the man said it sincerely, without material desire, the name acted. They were bewildered. They had never encountered anything like that. And then Yamaraj explained the glories of the holy name. Because Yamaraj, well, actually, Vidura is Yamaraj. And that's why, when the Pandavas go back to Godhead, Vidura goes back to being Yamaraj. There's a difference between the two. And why did Yamaraj become Vidura, who was a Dasi Putra, born of royal family, but with a maidservant? Right? Because there was a yogi named Mandak Muni, and he, when he died, Yamaraj came for him. And this yogi was, all his life he was, perfect yogi, a brahmana, he's a very nice man. Yamaraj came for him and said, why are you here? He said, I'm here because I'm going to take you. He said, what do you mean you're going to take me? What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong my whole life. He said, no. When you were a little kid, you pierced the body of an ant with a blade of grass and you killed it. He said, what? What do you mean when I was a little kid? He said, yeah, you did that. You're going to go to hell for it. He said, that's nonsense. I didn't know what I was doing. It doesn't matter. The laws of nature are blind. He said, no. Okay. He said, if you're going to do this, I curse you to become a Sudra, and you're going to suffer. So he was first-class yogi. So Yamaraj was forced to be a Sudra. But after that, no child is actually responsible for sinful activity until they become 14 years old, according to the Vedas. So Yamaraj had to become Vidura, and Vidura was a first-class Brahmana. He never accepted money for any services rendered. He would go every day. He was the half-brother of Dhritarashtra. He would go every day and give his brother advice, but he never took a penny from him. And he would come home and he'd go out and beg. If he didn't get anything, he and his wife would eat nothing. If he got something, they would eat. That's a real Brahmana. Brahmanas are independent. They don't get paid. I met this one guy once in France, and I said, sir, where you come from? He said, Vrindavan. I said, really? You were born in Vrindavan? That was like one of the first people I ever met that was born in Vrindavan after I became a devotee. So I thought, it says in the Nectar of Devotion that, they have 4 arms. They're like, liberated persons, So I said, you're a Brahmin? I said, yeah. I said, what do you do? He said, oh, I work in this company. Oh, really? Because I had read that Brahmanas never work for anyone. Vidura, he doesn't work for anyone, right? So it put a doubt in my mind, And then he said, well, I like you. He said, I was dressed like a devotee. I was a brahmachari. He said, why don't you come? We'll go have a glass of wine in the cafe. I said, what? Glass of wine? He said, yeah, it's good for you. Good for your health. I said, no, I can't drink. Why not? I said, well, my guru, your guru doesn't know what he's talking about. I said, I thought you were born in Vrindavan. He said, of course I'm born in Vrindavan. And then he went like this. And pulled out his Brahman thread. Said, see? So Prabhupada calls that a 2 paisa brahmana. It only cost 2 paisa in those days for a thread like this, right? So I was like shocked. I couldn't believe it, So I said, no, I can't go. He said, oh, come on. I said, no, I can't go. I'm sorry. I'm very happy to meet you, sir, and I give you my respects, but I can't do that. And I walked away. This is what's happened. A brahmana cannot work for someone. Otherwise, he's not free to speak the truth. Let's say you're at Microsoft and they take you out to a dinner, right? And you're sitting there and they say, what would you like? Would you like lamb or pig? Or how about a cow's tongue? Or a pig's ear? How about a pork chop or a lamb chop? Oh, how about a sirloin steak? And you keep saying, no, I can't do this. Well, what's the matter? Are you sick? No, I'm not sick. I'm a vegetarian. A vegetarian? Why are you a vegetarian? Well, it's not only a health issue, it's part of my religion. What religion is that? Hare Krishna? You mean those guys that go around the airports and pester everyone? I said, well, we don't do that anymore. so all of a sudden you become marginalized, right? And then, he gives the promotion to the other guy, not to you, because, you're a Hare Krishna, you don't eat meat, right? And you don't drink wine, and so forth. So, it becomes, how can you be a Brahmin? You have to lie. You can't tell the truth anymore. Like in Kerala, do they say I'm a Brahmana anymore? No. If you say you're a Brahmana, you don't get any job. Or even in where else? Other parts of India. Even Tamil Nadu, you say you're a Brahmana, you won't get a job. Okay, so here Prabhupada is now beginning to really go deeply into what is this Kali Yuga. In Canto 1, Chapter 16, verse number 21, the bull continues questioning Mother Earth in the form of a cow. He says, are you feeling compunction, or let's say compassion, for unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous people? Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? Yeah, we see this. There are brahmins that smoke bidis. There are brahmins that drink wine. There are brahmins that eat meat nowadays. There are brahmins that do other things we can't mention. What is this? What's happened in this age? People are going absolutely crazy. Then he says, or are you sorry to see that brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahminical culture? Well, even Ravana had brahmanas in Lanka. He was paying them to do pujas for him. That's happening today. Yeah, brahmanas that are kept by administrative people just to do pujas. Then he says, in the age of Kali, the women and children, along with brahmanas and cows, will be grossly neglected and left unprotected. Isn't that why they're rioting in Delhi right now? You see, this is being spoken over 5,000 years ago. They knew exactly what was going to happen in this age, and they analyzed it. And they gave the solution for it, but no one believes in the solution. They're always thinking, well, we got to pass another law. We got to do this. We got to do that. And they never solve the problem. It just keeps getting worse. In this age, illicit connection with women will render many women and children uncared for. Well, how many unwed mothers are there in the United States? It's almost half. I mean, the divorce rate is 50% of people who get married get divorced. And a majority of women are having babies out of wedlock now. In most cases, circumstantially, the women will try to become independent of the protection of men, and marriage will be performed as a matter of formal agreement between man and woman. In most cases, the children will not be taken care of properly. The brahmanas are traditionally intelligent men, and thus they will be able to pick up modern education to the topmost rank. But as far as moral and religious principles are concerned, they shall be the most fallen. So yeah, Brahmanas are, kids born in Brahmana families are, they win spelling bees, they become doctors, lawyers, and so forth. But in the meantime, they also become rascals. Yeah. Education and bad character go ill together, but such things will run parallel in Kali Yuga. The administrative heads as a class will condemn the tenets of Vedic wisdom and will prefer to conduct a so-called secular state. That's what India is. It's a secular state. And the so-called educated Brahmanas will be purchased by such unscrupulous administrators. Even a philosopher and a writer of many books on religious principles may also accept an exalted post in a government which denies all the moral codes of the Shastras. Well, he's talking about Dr. Radhakrishnan. Right? That's one example. The Brahmanas are specifically restricted from accepting such service. That's why Vidura did not take 1 penny from, and Chanakya Pandit also didn't take a penny from Chandragupta. But in this age, they will not only accept service, but they will do so even if it is of the meanest quality. These are some of the symptoms of the age of Kali which are harmful to the general welfare of human society. The so-called administrators are now bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put all state affairs into disorder. Are you now lamenting this disorder? Now the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc., and they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. Are you unhappy because of this? So this goes on. Now this is a very thorough explanation of the age of Kali. Now it's getting a little late, so we'll stop right here and we'll continue tomorrow. I thought we would finish it, but it's a very deep subject. This is explaining what's happening today. And once you understand it, you're in a position to do something effective to stop it. But without understanding this, whatever you do will be a waste of time and waste of effort. Just like a doctor, unless he has a correct diagnosis of a person's sickness, he does not administer medicine because he might kill the person by giving the wrong medicine. Well, in America, 200,000 to 300,000 people a year are killed by medical mistakes. That's a fact. More people than died in the Vietnam War, and almost as many people as died in the Civil War, which was the most lethal war that America ever had. 500,000 people died in that Civil War. So, you see, we're living in a very difficult time, but we can do something about it if we understand this. Not only the bad part, but the solution part. Both are given in Bhagavatam. Usually, in a novel, they'll give all the bad stuff, and it's very, supposed to be entertainment. Nowadays, you go to a movie, it's not entertaining. It gets you nervous, gets you upset, gets you depressed. You come out and they say, "How was the movie?" "Oh, it was great. I'm really depressed." So it's not entertainment anymore. It's depressing. Just like the people that went in the Colorado movie 12 o'clock at night to see the new Batman movie, And someone comes in dressed like Batman with a machine gun and kills the people. The same thing is going on the screen. The man came in and did it in reality. Right? They went in there to get entertained by seeing Batman kill people. This guy came in to entertain them really by killing them. You see, it's all symbolic of the craziness. That is not entertainment. Going somewhere and watching people get killed is not entertainment. That means we're reverting back to the Colosseum in ancient Rome. The Colosseum, people would go there, they'd get drunk, and they would watch people kill each other. It wasn't a movie, it was real. Right? And they would watch Christians being mauled and eaten by lions and tigers and bears that were purposely kept hungry, so that then they would come out and they'd see people there, they'd go after them. That was entertainment. They would sit there drunk watching this and cheering it. Or they'd see two gladiators fight, and then they would scream, kill him, kill him, kill him. And the gladiator would kill the other gladiator. You see, this was their entertainment. But what's the difference today? You see all these movies, they're seeing people getting killed all the time. Kids are playing video games, killing. See, the culture has changed. And it's very destructive. So we'll stop right there. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? You come here. Any bad things happening here? Take the temple with you. The culture of Krishna consciousness with you. You have to become a preacher. Krishna consciousness by your behavior and by your words. If the words and the behavior have to correspond, then you can help others. You don't think everyone's in anxiety out there? You see anyone, oh, I'm so happy, 2013 is coming, we're going over the fiscal cliff. They all, let's all drink to the fiscal cliff. No, they're in anxiety. They don't know what's going to happen in 2013. They're in anxiety. Right? So if you are not in anxiety, they're going to say, what's wrong with him? Is he taking a drug? And they'll ask you privately, what's going on in your life? How come you're not like us? That gives you a platform for explaining. But, that's why you have to understand all this stuff. This is the analysis of the problem. Then you can administer the medicine. You know the medicine that fits the problem. Then you're ustad. People are looking for an ustad. Not a ustadi businessman, but an ustad, real expert. When you go to a doctor, and the doctor does this and that, and then he says, well, it might be this, and it might be that, or maybe it's this other thing. You say, wait a minute, I didn't come here to hear an opinion. I came here to find out what it really is, doctor. Either you know or you don't know. If you don't know, you're not a doctor. Don't waste my time and money. Right? So, you only have like 30 seconds to 1 minute with these people that are devastated by the confusion of material life. You got to be so expert that in 30 seconds or 1 minute you can crystallize the problem and the solution in their mind. But that requires training. It's like being a Supreme Court lawyer. They give you 20 minutes to explain a case that's been going on for 20 years. You got to be so expert. In 20 minutes, you can convince the judge. They only give you 20 minutes. That's all. They got a big docket of cases. They're all big experts themselves. You have to crystallize, or you have to distill down that case to the fundamental points and explain it in 20 minutes. And it's been going on 20 years. The same way, you have to be expert in Krishna consciousness. You have to know this Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita by heart. Be able to explain to a person why they're suffering and how they can get out of it. Everybody's suffering. That's why Kali Yuga is so good for devotees. Everyone you meet is in ignorance and they're all suffering. And they don't know why. And they have no solution. It's a great time to be Krishna conscious. You can be busy 24 hours a day helping people. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Oh, very good. Yeah, by the way, this whole purpose here is to help people understand that this is the incarnation of Krishna in the age of Kali, this Bhagavatam. It's non-different than Krishna. It's the most mature realization of Vyasadeva. After having written all the Vedas, he wrote this, that is the cream. It's called Sar. the most nectarian cream, right? In fact, there was one verse I didn't read that I should have read. It's the third verse in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. And it says, Nigakama, yes, Sukhamukad Amrita Dravya Samyatam. Pibata Bhagavatam. Go ahead, Rasam. Yes. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literature. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. This is Amrita Dravya Samyatam. Okay, it says Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. This Amrita is nectar, right? So Nigama, the Vedic literature, Kalpataror, the desire tree, Galitam, fully matured, Phalam, fruit. So Sukha Deva, Sukha is a bird. It's a special bird. When the beak of that bird touches a fruit, it tastes sweeter than normal because something happens when he touches the fruit. So the Bhagavatam is already sweet, but when Sukadeva Goswami spoke it, it became much sweeter. And it's the mature fruit of the Vedic knowledge. So you cannot get anything better than this.